Alright, so we started on the old truck, Tundra, 2013 Tundra, with the 5.7 3RU FE. We drained the radiator, took the air box off, and then this cowl that it contains the windshield wipers. There's some bolts here and here. You can see right here. Well, I don't know if you can see that or not. Right there, and right there, and right there. Now the reason why you had to take the windshield wiper motor out before you took this cowl piece out is this bolt right here is underneath the windshield motor. It's really easy to take out though. There's a bolt here and then one right here. You see that? Yep, it's right there in the center. A couple other ones, the whole unit pops out pretty easily. And then this piece is bolted in. It's a kind of comes up at an angle like this, and it pops right out. I think it's back here in the truck. Let you see. Yeah. Oh, here's the. Oh, and I take the undercarriage off. So there's the piece right there, and you can see it. Pretty straightforward. Just look at it, you'll be able to see the bolts and stuff. It's pretty easy to take out and easy to understand. So I'm just trying to do little updates here and there. So the next thing is I'm going to take the radiator out. I'm not sure if I'll have to take the fan off first. It's the 4-bolt type, so it's not one of those big obnoxious reverse threaded silly ones that you need the specialty tool for. But we're going to get the radiator out and just start disconnecting stuff. Then we'll probably crawl underneath and do the underneath stuff, and that'll be all for today. It's going to be a light day because it's pool league day. Alright, so we got all the upper stuff disconnected. Wiring harness, there's some clips in here. Everything pops out. It's really nice, modular. Fuel lines, I disconnected one from down here and the other one from the manifold, and that's pretty neat. You see that blue in there. You take this safety clip off and then you press those blue buttons in and it comes off. You don't need any fuel line things. I drained the air conditioner and disconnected it. Took the radiator out. I was able to get the radiator out without pulling the fan and then fan shroud. And then once I got the fan and fan shroud out, it was easier to get the fan shroud out. It was easier to get the fan off. These were really tight for some reason. I'm going to leave them on for right now. Did have to disconnect this guy to get to this bolt. You don't have to disconnect the one underneath. See if I can find my. You don't have to disconnect the one underneath because you can get to that bolt through that hole right there. This is for the radiator. But you do have to disconnect this bracket to get to this bolt here. Right here. And then the other one comes through here. And the other one, you can see it, it's right in there. But you go through the, you can see my finger in there, I think. Go through that hole to get to it. Works out pretty good. Nothing really tricky, just follow stuff around. I took air hoses off. I think they're air hoses. From here and here. These were connected to there. I haven't disconnected this yet. I want to drain it. I think what I might do is pull the motor out. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what I want to do here because I take this off, it's going to drain all down on the engine. So I might disconnect this. I don't know. I'm just kind of at a loss for that right now. I think I'm just going to have to make a mess. Trying not to though. Air box is out. We pulled one spark plug. You can see I was starting to turn it over, looking for eyebrow marks on the pistons, but I didn't see one on this one. So tomorrow I'm going to pull all of the spark plugs and look at the all of the pistons, make sure everything's going up and down, and look for any eyebrow marks. If I can see any, then I'll be more positive about definitely needing to pull this motor, because right now I'm kind of questioning where I need to pull it or just do a timing chain set on the front. It would save me a good bit of work, but it's easier to do outside anyway, so I don't know, I'm kind of at a loss what to do at this point. So I'm going to do some checking tomorrow with the bore scope and see if I can find any reason not to pull the motor, I guess is the right way to say it. But we'll probably end up pulling the motor and he'll probably end up wanting to replace it. We'll have to talk to my friend. Anyway, this is all for today, and if there was any tricks, I'll I would have told you there's nothing, just standard taking stuff apart. Nothing other than the fact that you can get the radiator out without taking the shroud out first. You can't take the shroud out without taking the fan out. So the fan was really hard to get to with the shroud and everything in the way. So I ended up going underneath, disconnecting the lower radiator hose, and just kind of pulling the shroud around those, and then my son pulled up the radiator while I had the shroud. So it was a two-person job, but it made it easier to get to everything, to do it that way. So I did drain the did have to drain the air conditioner, but all right, we'll do an update tomorrow. All right, guys, I'll be the first to let you know this is kind of a pain in the rear. It is the first time I've worked on this particular motor and rig, so I'm just feeling it out. There's not a lot of information out there online. Watched a couple of videos, like some Toyota stuff, but nothing was very detailed. At any rate, a lot of people said that you have to pull the transmission with the motor. It didn't seem to make sense to me. So my first goal was to see if I could get to the flywheel bolts by pulling the starter. And hopefully you can see that's the flywheel bolt. There's a plastic piece Toyota put in there that gives you more access to the flywheel bolt. So yes, it is possible to pull the motor without pulling the transmission. And that's what I'm going to try to do. Now, to get to that starter, there might be a video out on the starter. I should have done this just for a starter video, because oh my goodness, that starter is in there. So the first thing I had to do is I had to take off over the exhaust manifold, which sits on there like that. There's a cover, so you can't get to any of the bolts without getting that off. There's 3 bolts. That comes off. And I'm sorry, the first thing I did was pull the, I'll crawl underneath, pull the exhaust, the whole pipe from the back of the manifold to there. Oh my goodness, I need a light under here. I'll try again later. Then I pulled this piece off of the exhaust manifold, and it came out stubbornly, but it did. It came out through the bottom. That allowed me to get to the bolts, and this might be helpful because I almost missed this one. No, this one. This one's really hard to see when you're working through the fender well. There's plenty of room in there through the fender well. I mean, if you don't have a lift, my lift is only a 5,000-pound lift. It won't even look at this truck without laughing. But this one's real easy to get to on the front once you pull the inner fender stuff out. And I'll show you what I did there. But there's basically 2 around each thing, and then each exhaust port. And then you have to pull these 2 guys off to disconnect the EGR stuff, exhaust gas recirculation. I started to pull these off, but then I'm like, oh wait, that's just a heat shield, so it's not connected to anything. Then came this, which covered up the starter. 3 bolts, real easy to get to. And then the starter bolts, this is the starter here. I put the bottom one back in. It's pretty straightforward. Once you get it uncovered, it's a typical starter. I will tell you, I need to take these tubes off. It just goes down. I think it's a transmission cooler, because it goes down to the transmission, that round thing down there that you see. Maybe you can't. It's right here. And they go up the back of the motor. They're already disconnected. I traced them out to the water area. I'll take those off before I get the motor out, but this bolt wouldn't come all the way out, but it's captured kind of with those in the way. But those bolts were ridiculously tight. I'm talking about, I did the old wrench on wrench trick, and I used the 7/8 that I did for pulling those off. They're 14s, so I used a 14 closed end. You couldn't get a socket on it because there's stuff in the way, and then I did the whole, you know, pry it with the other wrench. And this wrench it's a good foot long, and I had trouble with it. To access these front bolts here on the exhaust manifold, you can see they were right up there. It's pretty straightforward. Right? Yeah. Once you can see where it was bolted. Once you remove a few components here, it's pretty straightforward. So this guy just clips in. You see that's an external part. There was another one of those right here. And yeah, it was pretty easy to get to. So it was a struggle because there's a lot of little things you have to do in the right order. One of my studs came out. The rest of the bolts came out. This is the starter bolt, and this is a couple little EGR stuff. And I'll show you under here. So I undid both of those. These are captured nuts. So the bolt comes through the back, and it's actually a captured nut on this side. So don't put your wrench on the wrong side. I used my my electric impact, and it just rattled those off. Obviously, you can see I soaked them with PB Blaster, and they popped right off after that. This one, I put the wrench on the wrong side, and it snapped the bolt off, which I was like, oh, darn it. But it's all right. I'll tack weld it back on. Then over here, sorry, you can see it's pretty open access for pulling stuff down the back. This thing I did have to bend it back out of the way, but it's just an aluminum shield. So, but yeah, the header came out the bottom, the cover came out the bottom, the starter came out. You can see there's plenty of room in there. We can see the torque converter bolts, the flywheel bolts. So, you know, I'm going to proceed. I'm just calling it a day for today. You can hear I'm kind of tired. It was a struggle. It was just a lot of little pieces. It's nothing that's super complicated. You just got to take it off and take your time and take it off as you see things. I thought the bolt pattern might be handy for anybody messing with the taking that header off. And like I said, it did come off through the back bottom, so perfectly fine. The 3 bolts, 1 through the front and 2 towards the side, and then just the 2 starter bolts, typical. Man, I gotta say though, everything on this Toyota, the 5.7, this is a 3U RFE. I think I said that 100 times, but it's a way of drilling it in my own head. Oh, sorry. Also, to get that the initial aluminum cover off that was on the header, I did have to take the 1 bolt off that holds the oil dipstick in. I didn't pull the dipstick out. It just gave me some space to manipulate that doodle. So, yeah, like I was saying, everything on these cars seemed to be pretty well designed. I mean, it's at least possible to take the darn things apart, which is nice. Excuse me. And yeah, that's it for today. Hopefully you can see that. It's on the crank pulley, block of wood, frame rail, stuck. It's been working, so I wanted to show you in case you have a tendency to work by yourself. These guys aren't on very tight. I mean, I didn't put very much effort on that at all. And I'm taking this guy off, grabbing this guy, taking it out the rest of the way by hand. It's working pretty good so far. I'll let you know how many there are. There's more than 4, so well, probably 6. Alright guys, there's 6, and for some reason, 1 black one, and that's how you know you're all the way around. And I can tell, because I can reach in here, through the gap, and move my torque converter. And also, if you listen close, yep, so there's that. You can hear it moving in there, so you know you're loose. Now you can safely pull the motor without pulling the transmission, messing up that seal. Alright, so I got the Bellhousing bolts out. They are right here. They're all the same size. I'm sorry, there's 2 different sizes. There's obvious, the big 17s. And then on the very bottom, some little smaller guys. They're all the same length though. I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 big ones and 4 little ones, so 10 total. Standard stuff, man. You just gotta get a wrench on them, crack them loose. They were pretty tight. I was showing you this. So what I did, there's 2 on the very back of the motor right next to the firewall, so it's kind of tight. So I use this. It overswings more than 90. You can't use this one. I tried. It's a Harbor Freight one, and it swings too, but it's got this big head to it. so you couldn't get it down there. So like I said, the only trick was on these guys that are, I won't even show you where they are there. It's obvious you can find them, but back there, so you can see how I'm kind of coming backwards, and it's really tight. So I was able to just break them loose with that, and then get down there with my fingers and get them out the rest of the way. Because once it was kind of nice, they were clean into aluminum, they weren't corroded. So once you snapped them loose, they just spun out. To access, let me see if I can get a light here. Sorry. To access this one, this guy that was right down here, way down in that hole, I had to loosen. I put the bolts back in, but I took these pipes loose. I didn't take them off because they go down to the transmission cooler, and I've already removed them down there to get to some of the bolts. I'll show you in just a second. But when I came up here to get that one, these pipes were blocking it again. So I took this bolt out and this bolt out, moved them out of the way, and then kind of put the bolts back in loose so I'll remember. Anyway, now I'll show you the spot that I was just talking about on those transmission bolts. And again, they're pretty standard stuff. It's nothing difficult. Well, it's a pain in the rear, but it's not like you need a special tool or anything. But so those pipes had to move to get to that bolt hole. You can see the one that's exposed up there. And you know, these are where the smallest ones started. There's 4 of those. So I'm not going to waste time showing you where all the bolts are. It's pretty obvious, but they're relatively easy to get to. It only took a little bit of time. The other thing, if you look over here, the exhaust is off on the driver's side, but it won't, because I can't, my lifts won't lift this truck, it won't come out. So I just pushed it off to the side. I had to move it once or twice to get to different things, but I have not had to pull the transfer case drive line, so that's kind of a blessing so far. A little less work here and there, but anyway, yeah, so those bolts came out relatively easy. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but I got a pan up here. So what I did is I was looking at the power steering, and it's like, what a mess. It wasn't giving me an opportunity to, there's no lowest hose to take off that you could drain everything nicely. It's weird. Like the hoses come up here, and then see if I can see, they just go down there, and you know, it's just, I couldn't find it, so I waited till the last minute, basically what I'm saying. And I said, oh, I'm going to be crawling under this less at this point, so waited till the last minute. I took there's a main line, it's right in here. You can't see it because I'm a terrible filmographer, but it was this guy, and it was right there. It's got a sensor on it, so once you take it off, you can get to the sensor pretty good. And then I just set it down there and let it drain. It's going to make a mess. I couldn't figure out a way not to, so I'll just have to clean that up at any rate. So we're at now. So the next thing I'm going to do is disconnect wires from the transmission harness, which there's about 8 of them or so. I'll let you know for sure when I get them disconnected, because there's no connector between the transmission and the motor. So I'll get the transmission wires off, and then it's 2 motor mount stud bolts or nuts that come off, and then she should be ready to go out. The hardest part, I think, is going to be figuring out where to hook a chain to, because it just doesn't look like there's a spot. Anyway, I'll keep you up to date. Alright, so the engine and transmission do not have a sub-harness connector, so you have to make a decision whether you want to pull all the wiring off of the engine or off the transmission. So I'm back here by the transfer case. Started right here with this connector. There's another connector right up here, and then there's another connector right here. And then I found that the easiest way to get, it goes along the very top, but if you just kind of reach back, you notice the exhaust is in the way, but you can move that. I don't have it up on the lift, so it's just movable. You can move it forward or backwards, you twist it. But to get up on the top here, there's some clips. You see my fingers right there. There. And then along the top, there's a couple vacuum lines that were really difficult to get off. One of them right here. I don't know if you can see that. But, yeah, there's one right up there. It's difficult to get off. And then you just work along down here. There's a couple in here, and then up and around. Now there's one. I think it's your I'm not sure if it's your speed sensor or motor speed sensor or what. Well, I'm sure I'll find out when I go to rebuild or whatever. But right there. So I had to actually take that sensor out in order to get the connector off because the lock for it's on the back side. Weird. But that's this one right here. And it goes up around the back. So it actually took me about an hour to get all these off, just slowly. Not super easy. But, it's the way it is sometimes. Alright, so my goal for today is to get it ready to pull, and then I'll let it set for a day so I can do it Friday when I have plenty of time. I can go slow. Now I'm looking around going, okay, make sure you got everything. What I'm going to do today is put the chain on, take the motor mounts off, put my wheels back on, set her down on the ground, bring the lift in. It's a little bit of work, but it should be enough to get me prepped for the next step. And I was looking, going, I know the starter's connected to power, and I realized I got to take this power off. Looks like it just connects in there. This connector and this ground, which attaches to that, and then this connector, which connects it to the body. I think the rest of it is connected to the engine. So a couple small connections over here that I missed. This is an addition to where they've added on those electric running boards. But yeah, so I missed a couple things there. So we're going to do that. We're going to put a chain on. We're going to disconnect the motor mounts, put our wheels on, set her down on the ground, and that should be ready. And that should be what we get done today. So we'll give you an update here in a minute. Alrighty guys, got the chain. I don't know if it's going to work or not. I got it around one exhaust manifold on the driver's side. I took that off on the passenger side, so I couldn't do it over here. I went to a little sketchy. I went to the pulley. I don't know if you can see that down there, it's kind of dark. Went to the pulley on the power steering pump. Thinking it's probably strong enough to get it out and get it on a motor stand. I don't know why they don't put any hooks. Every other foreign car I know, Audi, Volkswagen, freaking Toyota, little cars, everybody puts hooks on. I guess they don't expect these motors to ever break. We got the transmission supported. And I got my motor mount bolts out. I don't have my light, but they're back there real easy, just one stud. Motor mounts are, got studs through the center. That's just one little bolt right on top. Super easy to get out. No tricks here. Got it supported for the night. I'll pull it out tomorrow when I have time to, take time. A little bit at a time, man. That's how it goes around here. Anyway, I'll keep you up to date. Well, I didn't foresee this problem. my engine hoist won't lift the motor above the front of the car. So I'm going to have to take the wheels back off, jack it up, take the wheels off, set it down just to get the clearance there. But I ran into a couple small issues. You see these lines right here. They were to the power steering. Transmission cooler. There was a bolt. Where was it? Right here. You can see this bracket here, I think. I think you can see it right there. And right here. So they were attached, and then there was a vacuum line attached back here. But other than that, we got everything else out, which is a blessing. And we're just gonna have to deal with this small clearance issue. Hope it'll give me enough lowering that thing down, and I won't hit. Of course I'm gonna hit. It's gonna be close. Lowered Tundra, anyone? It looks like a old school dragster. I had to drop it all the way down and actually compress the press the rotors on the concrete to clear it. But she's an outster. Alright, I'm going to go get the weight back up on the tires and we'll be good to go. Alright guys, so I'm fixing to roll this guy out of the shop whilst I handle the engine issue. Not sure if we're going to do a rebuild, buy a long block, or buy a junkyard replacement. That's up to the owner. Hopefully we do a kind of a rebuild. I think it's just the chains that gave way. It did overheat, so we're going to do definitely pull the heads off. I didn't see any eyebrow markings on the pistons when I took it apart, so if he wants me to rebuild it, we'll tear it apart and I'll do a video on that. But for now, I just wanted to do a nice video showing what it took to get this out. It wasn't really that hard. It was pretty simple, just, you know, one day at a time, one step at a time, and overcoming small problems as they came. I think the hardest really part was getting that manifold off over here. It was the most tedious, not hard, just figuring out how to get to it. So anyway, there's how to pull a 3URFE out of a 2013 Tundra. We'll get this posted here pretty quick, and hope you guys like it and it's useful.